Hey, it's John from Tinderbox Arts. I'm going to do a review today real quick on the Mustang. This is the sport touring seat for the Triumph Bonneville. Now my Bonneville is a 2010, but this seat fits a whole bunch of years. Basically all the EFI models this seat is going to fit. Now there is two different seats. There's the sport touring seat, which is what you're looking at here, and there's a classic seat. The classic seat is a little bit different as far as the stitching here and the detail here. It has a perforated vinyl middle part here, and this has the rib section instead. So those are the two main differences, but I understand that comfort-wise and height-wise, they're about the same. So it's really maybe more a matter of you know, the look of it and whether you like one or the other. I didn't care for the perforated center section here just because water would get in there more easily, and I just didn't like the look as much, so I went with this. Now it comes in a box. It's well packed, everything's in good shape there, and I have the stock seat here. I'm going to compare and contrast the two, but I wanted to show you first what it looks like on the bike. My first impression, it is a little cruiserish as far as this section here, but not as severe as I kind of feared. So as far as the look, I think it's not so far off from the factory look that you can't deal with it. I do have a luggage thing here that I keep on the back, and I have a Rentec. See if I can get a shot of that. You have a Rentec, you know, rack here on the bottom, and I was somewhat concerned that the new seat wouldn't fit well with that. It does fit, but putting it on is not as easy as the stock seat. I had to kind of force the seat back, keep it flat, force it back into the rack, and then push it forward to engage the little tab on the front here. And then once I did that, I was able to use the two screws. The factory seat has more than one. In fact, I'll show you here. If I turn this factory seat over here without spilling it. The factory seat has, you know, this little catch here, and it has a little thing in the front here to catch, and then has two screws in the back. The Mustang seat doesn't have these at all, so it doesn't seem to make any difference, and it does have these little rubber feet everywhere. And I'll also mention the factory seat uses staples to connect, whereas the Mustang seat uses rivets to connect the vinyl to the seat pan. The seat pan on the Mustang doesn't have quite as much room in here, but it's not so far off that I think it's going to be an issue for most people. Now, getting back to the seat itself, I'm going to hold up the factory seat here. I'm going to put it next to the two next to each other and just show you a couple of things which I noticed right away. All right, I've got the two seats side by side here so I can show you some comparisons. Here's the factory seat and here's the Mustang seat. Now, the one major difference is that the Mustang seat has a definite pocket, I'm going to call it, a scooped out section right here where they want your rear end to be and where it's going to be most comfortable. The factory seat doesn't really have a pocket, so you can stick your rear end anywhere in this section and it's going to work. Now, it's not as comfortable, but it doesn't really force you to be in one area. Now, I'm 5'5" and maybe around a 29-inch inseam at best, and so when you're a shorter rider, if you're forced to stick your butt in one area here, so here's the pocket, that affects your relationship to the handlebars as far as the length of your arms. So you may find that where Mustang puts the pocket is not quite where you'd want your rear end to be. On the factory seat, I could stick it wherever I wanted, and on long trips I could move it around pretty easily, and it didn't really matter. On the Mustang seat, well, it sort of does matter. Now, I've ridden this, and you can, even though the pocket naturally is right here, you can sit a little forward, and it won't prevent you from doing that, but, you know, it's not ideal. So, as far as comfort, I would say if you're 5'8" and above, this is going to be a non-issue for you. You're not even going to notice it. If you're 5'8" and lower, or shorter, then if you have short arms, it may be an issue as far as relationship to the handlebars. Now, I do have handlebar risers on my Bonnie, and it raises them up but also back slightly. So I've already got that going on. And I found after riding this that I would want the pocket to be maybe an inch or two towards the front versus where it is now. So it's not the end of the world, but it isn't as comfortable as it might be because I'm forced to either sit back in the pocket and extend my arms longer than I would want, or sit forward and my arms are good, but then it's not as comfortable as it would be. Having said that, the Mustang seat is definitely much more comfortable than the factory seat. Even if you're not sitting exactly where they want you to sit, it's definitely more comfortable. The padding is better, and because there is some kind of scoop there, even if you're not in the exact right place, it's definitely less butt numbing than the factory seat has been. Now I've ridden this factory seat for a few years now, and you know, once you get over 100 miles, man, your rear end really starts to feel it. It's basically a slab. So the Mustang seat is better in that regard, but if you're taller, it's going to be the most comfortable. If you're shorter, it may not be as comfortable as it would otherwise. Now, as far as the quality of the actual vinyl and all that, the Mustang seat is definitely above. You'll see, if I get closer in here, this stitching here is actual stitching, and they even put a wax on the threads there to kind of prevent water from soaking in. On the factory seat, there's just pretend stitching here. It's just one solid piece of vinyl. There's no actual perforations, or there's not actual stitching there. You don't have this little thing here, which actually I did occasionally use to tie a helmet down just so it didn't roll off or that kind of thing. But by and large, the quality is just much better on the Mustang seat. For the passenger, you know, on the factory seat, it's quite a big slab there, and I don't know that they found it all that comfortable. The Mustang seat, I haven't had a passenger sit on it yet, but you can see there is some contour here, and maybe the seating area isn't quite as big as on the factory seat, but I don't think it's going to be an issue. I sat on it, it feels comfortable enough. So as far as comfort, you know, the Mustang seat definitely is an improvement no matter what. But if you're shorter, you know, it may not be as comfortable as it would be if you're taller. I'll mention one other thing as far as the contour of the seat. The factory seat, if you came to a stoplight and you put your legs down, this area right here is pretty smooth, and you really didn't feel that too badly on your leg. The Mustang seat actually is not as good in that regard because there's more of a hard edge here, I think because they had to make that scoop. So because that hard edge is there, when you spread your legs out to put your feet down, you do feel that on the inside of your thigh. It's not terribly, it's not a huge problem, but you do feel it. So that is one difference where I actually prefer the factory seat, is when you're stopped at a stoplight. It's just a smoother area right here and doesn't cut into your legs. All right, so what's the final verdict here? You know, as far as looks, it does change it from the factory slightly, but I don't think it's so... Honestly, in pictures, it looks worse than it is in person. So in person, it's slightly more cruiserish because of the scoop, but really it's not that dramatic. So I don't think that's really an issue now that I've seen it in person. As far as fitment, it fits pretty much with anything I can imagine. Like I said, I had these Rentec bars, and it was a little tight getting it in, but it is doable. And I don't think any of the other brands of bars are any closer than these, so I think you're fine there. So as far as looks and fitment, I think it's a nice looking seat. And certainly when you get up close, the quality is much more evident. You know, it's a much higher quality level of vinyl. You have actual stitching. You have details like this, which, you know, it looks like a nicer seat, and it is. The cost is about $375 for the sport touring model, and about $300 street for the classic model. And like I said, the classic model just has those perforations. But as far as comfort, which is probably the reason you're buying this seat, I would say, you know, if you're taller, it's a no-brainer. You're definitely going to be much more comfortable in this seat, and you should go right out and buy it. There's just no question. If you're shorter like me, it is still more comfortable, but not as comfortable as the taller people are going to enjoy. So I think it's worth it probably in the end, and I'm not going to get rid of this. I bought it and I'm happy enough with it. But I do wish the pocket were just a little bit more forward for me, or there was some option to, you know, have the factory do that for you. But all in all, it's a quality seat. There's no question about that. And I think it's a purchase worth making pretty much in all cases. Just know that if you're shorter, it's not as advantageous as if you're taller.